People. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone today?
Awesome.
There we go. Now we're alive. First of all, I'd like to thank HighSpot for the opportunity and for putting together this incredible panel. That topic of the charter seems to come up over and over again. So it's one of those things that I've been excited all week and emailing back and forth and all of the online social media that comes together. Our goal is to make sure that we do a couple things. One, we talk about this in stages. Where have we been? Where are we now, and where are we going as sales enablement practitioners, and how are we going to get there? What are the tools, what are the vehicles, what are the programs, processes, et cetera, that get there? So first of all, I am Roderick Jefferson. I am the CEO of Roderick Jefferson Associates. We are a consulting firm focused on sales enablement. Little on my background, 25 years of doing training, enablement, effectiveness, all the titles that I'm sure everyone in the room has carried. Yes, 25 years. I'm older than I look, I just don't tan. I'll leave it at that. And so, it's always a strange reaction on that one. Because you want to laugh, you're like, but should I laugh? Is that fine? And so, quickly on my background, I am a salesperson first and foremost. Started out carrying a bag, moved into a sales enablement role from there, and I've run enablement at Siebel Systems, Network Appliance, Business Objects, eBay, HP, Oracle, Salesforce, and most recently Marketo. Some of those are going to be big one day, trust me. At least I'm counting on the stock to do something. So I would like to, first and foremost, thank the folks that are on the panel for giving up time and sharing your best practices. And if we could start here at Haley and go down, just take a moment, introduce yourself, your company, and your responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Haley Katzman. I work at a company called HighSpot, and I'm the Vice President of Account Development, and I also lead our enablement team internally. Really passionate about growing technology companies in that high growth phase. Took a team of 0 2 years ago on the account development team to about 45 today, and doubling every year after that. So really excited to share some of the internal best practices from an enablement perspective. Also kind of the perspective of a sales leader as well, sales first and foremost, as well as some of the companies that we work with and help enable their sales teams as well.
Thanks, Haley.
Yeah.
Steven.
So I'm Steve Hellewell. I run sales enablement and what would probably be called sales strategy in a lot of companies at MuleSoft, now part of Salesforce, which has been pretty exciting, part of our journey. This is the second company I've done it. Prior to that was Responsys, and a lot of where I've focused is, I've seen as companies scale from the tens of millions of revenue to hundreds of millions of revenue, there's an awful lot that has to change about their go-to-market. It impacts everything from marketing, sales development, sales, and kind of every other part of the go-to-market operation, and it's what I've been at the heart of helping to re-architect.
Carrie?
I'm Carrie Bustillos, and I lead the global sales enablement team at Autodesk. We formed it about 4 years ago. And I have a group of about 40 sales enablement professionals who are focused on the business of people. That's really what I view my job as. It's people and helping people to be great performers. So we focus on making sure that we instill in our sales team and our customer success people the right mindset, help them develop the right skill set, and learn how to leverage the tool set that's going to help them be really, really good at what they do.
Hi, my name's Hayne Black. I currently work at 8x8 and running their global team there for direct and indirect sales. So a little bit about my background. I was many years an engineer, then many years marketing, and then many years sales. So add those all together, it's been a career, but it's kind of where I see enablement going. You kind of need that cross-functional translator to be able to get buy-in from the C-suite and then to actually translate it and get buy-in from the sales team, because at the end of the day, we're all salespeople.
And hi everybody, I'm Ryan Levitt. I was one of the founders of LearnCore, which was recently acquired by Showpad. So now I lead growth and strategy at Showpad, and one of my responsibilities is sales enablement. So what's really interesting about that is until the last 3 or 4 months, I've actually never been a sales enablement practitioner. But I've spent the last 7 or 8 years working with hundreds of you folks, right? Hundreds of sales enablement practitioners learning from you, and now I'm leading it, which is really interesting. We have a global organization. We have 4 people on our sales enablement team, and I'm here to share some of my experiences and learn from you all as well. So this should be a really exciting day and panel.
Thanks, everyone. So we want to do this a little different. So obviously, we've all been to these before, and I promise that we won't talk for 58 minutes and leave 2 minutes for questions, as we've seen. So what we'd like to do is make this interactive. We've got a list of questions that we can go through. However, I'd like to make this a bit more of a conversation and find out what's important to you, why you came, and what you're hoping to learn out of this from this group, because you've got an enormous amount of experience and tenure up here. So why don't we just dive into this thing, and as questions come, we'll run the mic if we can. So Haley, let's start with you. We all talk about goals when we come in, and obviously they're incredibly important. What do you consider some of your most important goals when you're thinking through sales enablement strategy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that, from working with a lot of companies and then also leading it internally, different enablement teams will have different goals. I think one of the things that, we've really noticed is that, as we kind of talk about the evolution of the function, the role is becoming much more strategic, which is great because you can be more goal-oriented and less reactive. And there's a lot of different elements that we look at. There's absolutely the element for us, since we're such a high-growth company and we are bringing on new people on a very frequent basis. We're looking at time to first sale. So we're looking at how fast we can onboard someone. We're also looking at adoption of the content, the knowledge, the training that's actually getting used. We're creating all these materials. Are they actually getting used by the team? Are they engaging our buyers? So we're always looking to increase that usage. And then at the end of the day, we really look at our goals being the same goals as the audience that we actually go and enable. So we're enabling not just sales, but also account development, our partner teams, services, and they have individual goals as a function, and so we are completely aligned to whatever those goals are because we're there to support them in meeting and exceeding those goals. So very, very tightly aligned with each team's goals.
And how do you ensure that those goals take us as sales enablement practitioners away from being the fixers of broken things to really focusing on helping to partner and drive incremental revenue?
Yeah, it's a really good question because you really can get stuck in this trap of being so reactive and just putting out fires, but you have to be very intentional about being strategic. So I always talk to our team internally and say, realistically, we want to be strategic in about 60% of what we're doing. 40% is going to be reactive. There's a lot of things that just come up, and we do have to, be reactive in those scenarios. So a lot of, I loved what you said. A lot of it is really great project management and prioritization, and making sure that you are hearing everything that each of the teams need, but that you are looking at the broader strategy and prioritizing effectively so that you can meet those overall goals. And that takes a lot of cross-functional communication, a lot of project management. So it's no easy task, but you just want to remain strategic as well as, being reactive in some scenarios.
So you've got to learn to be strategically tactical then, is what you're saying.
Yep.
I love where you're going. Carrie, I'd like to move the next question to you and stay in line with where we were with Haley, and that is, as it continues to evolve from where we've been to where we are, and especially because the globalization has just taken over, how do you build a charter that supports a broad and global audience? We had a chance to talk. And if you can, just kind of outline, first of all the areas of your responsibility, and then how do you tie all that together globally?
Yeah. I first want to react to something that you mentioned, Roderick, and you and I have talked about this, that sometimes people talk about sales enablement as the fixer of broken things. Mm-hmm. And I really don't like that. Yeah. Because for me, again, it's about people. People are not broken things. People are amazing, wonderful individuals who are contributing to the success of your company, the success of your customers. And so you shouldn't treat them like broken things. Maybe there's broken processes. But again, I'm in the business of people. And if you stay focused on making sure that you think about how to make people really successful at what you do, it's hard to go wrong. Now, as your charters expand to become more global in nature, I think Haley has a really good point that you have to stay attuned to how your business is evolving and what the needs of the business are that are shifting. It's really important that you understand your leaders, the head of sales, the head of marketing, the entire C-suite. You have to understand what is really important to the business, what are the key initiatives that are being driven, and how the sales enablement function can help further those initiatives, and how investing in people and helping them be high performers is important. Now at Autodesk, one of the moves that we've made recently is to expand our sales enablement efforts to the customer success function. Now some of you that might be more born in the cloud companies and subscription models, this may be part of your DNA, but Autodesk is over 30 years old, and we started out as a company selling perpetual licenses of software. We've shifted that over the last couple of years, and it's important to know the entire customer success cycle and how you make sure that you're driving that entire success cycle, and that includes the customer success function. So if we're only addressing the sales piece of it, it's incomplete. So we've been expanding to cover that base too. And the types of things that we do, again, are all about helping ensure that our sales team and our customer success organization have the knowledge, the skills, the capabilities to do their jobs really well.
Great. Steve, quick question for you, and that is, as we're talking about that globalization, and we're talking about building a charter, how do you build a productive charter on the front end that has long tail of sustainability behind it?
So just picking up on the dialogue here earlier, there's the saying that all politics is local. I think ultimately all enablement is local. That as you think about dealing with an expanding global team, if we're not very in tune with and meeting the needs of the folks, in whatever region, whatever part of the world people happen to be in, we're not going to be successful. But similarly, we can't have a dozen different initiatives going on out there. It has to all come back to a central thing. So one of the things that my team is focused on is making sure that we really have close alignment with our frontline leaders that are able to really translate, here are the broader goals and initiatives. How does this show up for you at the ground level, at the local level, and how do we make what we're doing relevant and get the buy-in from the local sales leaders? So I think that's one of the pieces of making sure that this charter is durable. I think the other element is making sure that we're always anchoring on top-level business value. What our team is quoted on when we wake up every day thinking about is overall sales productivity. If we're, going back to what you said, if we're helping everybody in the field get better at what they do every day, we're going to be successful. But that provides the grounding.
Thanks, Steve. And so from there inherently becomes what we all do and focus on, which is change management. And Ryan, I've got a question for you because you're living this now. So as you're going through that change management process, how does that impact the goals that were in place previously? Because we're watching landscapes just collapse across the board in multiple spaces. And because you're living it, I'd love to find out from you, how is that transformation now impacting what your world was, where it's going to, and how much more important is the change management component now?
Good question. So we're currently going through an acquisition. We're going through a merger integration right now, right? So there's a lot of change happening in our organization. That's what RJ is referring to. And you guys have all kind of hit the nail on the head with this. I really start with prioritization. You need to make sure that everybody at the C-level, the heads of each department, the head of sales, the head of marketing, head of customer success, everybody is aligned on what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And then communication is really, really critical, so you need to get buy-in from every level down. So before we roll anything out to the field, anything that's going to be changed, any new processes, any new messaging, any sales motions or anything like that, we need to make sure that the leaders are also bought in on this. So the leaders have to understand it, you have to train the trainer, you have to make sure they're certified, and everybody understands why. Because if everybody ultimately understands why, you could then drive it down to the frontline teams. And then their managers are bought in, and the leaders are bought in, and everybody's aligned on the same goals and trying to attack it together. Without that buy-in, without that communication, it falls, because everybody's trying to run really quickly, and there's a lot of different initiatives happening. And actually I learned, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, I was talking to, I don't know if anybody knows Doug Landis, he ran sales productivity at Box, and he was telling me about how they prioritized they did 3 certifications every quarter. And they would sit down before the quarter with the whole C-level team, and they'd say, this is what we're doing. Is everybody aligned with this? And when everybody's bought in, then they would go and execute. Because if that changed too quickly, then you're rolling out 8 or 10 things and nobody can actually execute on it. So it really is that prioritization and the communication, I think, to drive a really solid change management across the organization. And then the last thing is that there is a lot happening at our organization. I'm sure it is with all of you and everybody out here as well. So enablement, and Jake, you mentioned this in your introduction, it is not just the enablement team and the sales reps, right? It is everybody in the organization. Everybody's responsible for making sure it's successful. And again, that goes back to the communication into why, to then make sure that everybody's involved. And like we really, really try to drive that through.
Good job. So in line with that, and before I go on, I want to make sure that I do a pulse check. Are there any questions in the audience? Jake, we've got a question here.
This on? So whether internal or external as a consultant, let's say you're chartered by VP of Sales or Chief Sales Officer or Chief Marketing Officer, and you start talking to the regional sales leaders, and they say, oh, no. I hire professionals. They need to be out there selling. I really don't have time for this stuff. They need to be doing real work.
That never happens.
How do you address that issue? And I assume nobody else has seen this except me, right?
Maybe once or twice.
So
Judging by the room, I think there's more than one.
Enablement has moved really, we've talked about enablement 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and it's absolutely appropriate for where the company is in its journey. But when you talk about seasoned sellers, our goal really is, I want to borrow a friend of mine's phrase, Renee Kapilova from Palo Alto Networks. Our goal is to move the middle. So we've moved enablement from producing content to delivering content and measuring consumption to measuring application. So what I tell my people, we have to have ways to measure leading indicators. Now, if you're at the bottom of the leaderboard but you're killing your quota, awesome, okay? But if you're struggling and you need to make up for your consumption, that's a very difficult conversation. And in most employment situations outside of sales, you have a first conversation, a second conversation that says you're gonna have a third one and you don't wanna get to the third one. In sales, you have one conversation. So I tell my people that up front, we're here to make you better. Why would you not spend that 12 to 15 minutes a week investment in your own career? And if you have the backing of your C-suite, then and constant check-ins from your C-suite, then you'll get the buy-in and application. I see a lot of head nodding here.
Yeah. Well, I have a point of view on this one too. I think you have to earn the right to have that conversation and to provide that solution to a sales leader in the field. And I think as we sit up here and talk about, well, focus on the priorities. That's great, but you probably have more things you're being asked to do than you have time to do. And so you have to make a bet, and you have to be strategic about the move and where you're going to focus your organization, because you can't do it all. One of the ways that we did this to earn the right to engage with some of the field leaders is to focus on programs that we thought was really going to make a difference. For us 4 years ago, that was onboarding, because we were doing a lot of hiring in the organization, and the onboarding was not really updated over about a 5-year period. And so we made a strategic investment to bring in somebody with a very strong sales background to redesign and re-architect that entire onboarding experience for new hires. And it was really good. And guess what? The sales team and the sales managers saw how people who were coming through the program were high performers. They were doing better than people who didn't go through that program. So that earned us a right to go and work with leaders in the field and talk to them about other things that we could do to help them be successful.
It's also helpful I don't know if any of you run an enablement council where it's really led by sales leaders. How many of you have something like that?
Advisory groups.
Yeah, an advisory group.
Yeah, if you don't, I highly recommend working to
If you
get that
don't,
council in place.
That's the best way to get buy-in. But essentially, you've got your sales VPs globally, and you've got some top sellers in there. So any new program that comes in, and then we invite other groups. We invite marketing, we invite training, we invite services to come in to present, hey, we're gonna roll out this campaign. And they almost do a focus group with the top sales leaders. And so we massage the program, and then we say, okay, why don't you come back to us next month? They come back to us, and we say, that sounds like an awesome program. Then we go live to the field. And when the field sees it, they say, okay, this has been blessed by council. These guys have made club every year. I want to look like that. And it's very helpful. That's one way you can get buy-in.
Well, and as a consultant, coming back to your question, we are perpetually, quote unquote, earning that right. And so there are a couple of things that my company does differently, and that is, first of all, we start with an assessment. And we come in with a set of fresh eyes and say, look, we're not here to poke holes. We're not here to find out what's wrong and fix everything. We're really here to give you a fresh set of eyes, and we have some very specific strategic questions. And fortunately, everyone on the team comes from sales and has carried a bag, so we speak that language. And I think that's the other piece that I want to stress is, as enablement folks, obviously we've got our own lingo. Stop using it.
Yeah.
Start talking in your customers. And please, if I can say anything, I implore you, stop calling them stakeholders, because they're not. They are your customers. They are your business partners. And as long as you treat them as stakeholders, that means that one of you are beholden to each other. As partners, in order to make this mutually equitable, it requires that you both have input and both have a give and take in this. So if you could step back and say, okay, would I treat an external customer and would I approach them this way? If the answer is no, don't do it internally. Take the same philosophy internally as well.
I just had a quick question. I don't know if it's quick, but it's...
Hello, Kira.
Hello, Roger.
It won't be quick.
Oh, hush you.
I know, Kira. It'll be deep, but it will not be quick.
Thank you for throwing me under the bus. So I know that a lot of sales enablement leaders are faced with the urgency of execution versus quality, and in many ways there is a lack of understanding between that trade-off. How have you handled that very difficult conversation in the past?
Steve, this is a great one for you.
I don't know if I have any great answers on this one, other than you got to do both. I mean, and it ultimately has to be both. I don't have anything better than that, other than we've got to move quickly. You have to move with urgency, and if the quality isn't awesome, you lose the right to engage. I think everything. So my team and I talk a lot about is the minute we roll out something that's half baked, we've lost our audience.
Yeah.
Be realistic. And what I mean by that is, don't take on 17 different deliverables, because it's not going to happen. Say, okay, we can do these top 3 to 5, and if we do these really well, this will help move the needle. And the old adage of we can do this right or we can do it fast, I think still sits in place. So find out from them. Do you want this fast?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's going to be fast, but it's going to be iterative.
Yep.
Right? This will be a pilot. We'll start here and we'll grow. You want this done right, it's going to take some time, it's going to take some planning, and it's going to take collaboration, and not just with sales and enablement. You've got to bring in all those other pieces, and that's where the orchestration piece comes in, as you were saying earlier, about making sure that everyone comes to the table.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the fewer better. I think it's easy to get stuck in the trap of trying to please everybody and trying to address everybody's needs. And it's really difficult to do that well, and you're going to compromise. And I found that by focusing on fewer things, doing them really, really well, people are going to come to you and say, oh, I want more of that. I want some of that. How do I get some of that? Yep. And then you can have a conversation about how to make that happen.
And I bring it back to being the trusted advisor for your customers. I go back to the sales team every single quarter. These are the 15 initiatives we're looking at. Give me 3. And then we get a survey out and we say, okay, these are where our salespeople are suffering. They're having a hard time with unclear messaging, or they're having a hard time with T's and C's in the contracts. But we move the needle for them on what they think are slowing them down from closing deals.
And the one thing I would add to this, and this might be a little bit of a contrarian perspective, is that the content that you're creating, if you're striving for perfection, you're going one step too far. Because you could continuously change and improve and perfect the content. The content is about impact, and it's about who's delivering it and what value it's giving, and making sure that it's not, we used to call it, like, we're not trying to create Hollywood content, right? If you have the video of the subject matter expert and they could do it in 2 hours and the content is great, or you could spend 2 days trying to make it look beautiful, maybe you just want the great content from the subject matter expert, because that content may change again in 30 days, right? And so it's about getting this, it's about the impact of what you're creating so you can get it out there. And
Strive for better, not perfect.
There you go.
Because
And
perfect's going to
sometimes
change tomorrow.
It's good to walk away from perfect.
It is.
If perfect is replaced with productive.
Allow me to prod you a little bit there, because for anybody in this room, at least when I'm standing on this side, the worst thing you can hear is, Steve, you got to do both. But that's exactly what your stakeholders and executive team often want you to do. I'm going to prod Haley because I want to ask about how do we actually make those tough priority trade-off decisions, knowing that all of us have limited capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I think the conversations that we've been having around, treating the audience that you're working with like a customer is just so important, and I think that will help guide you in a lot of these scenarios that we're talking about. So I mean, practice what you preach, like do a great discovery. Why do they need whatever the request is? Really understand the why behind it, understand what they're looking for as an outcome, and a lot of times you can consolidate a lot of these little tiny requests in a more strategic way, and that's where if you do have a function that is looking at the entire go-to-market team, you can be a lot more, you can make a bigger impact with high quality things rather than being so reactive with these smaller projects. But I think that's really the thing that guides us is, the conversation. If we get a specific request, it's doing a discovery, understanding why, communicating, this is what this will look like if it's completed in X time, or if we do it in this time, this is what it will look like. What do you want? I mean, they're the customer, so it's, whatever you want. There's some scenarios where, we've run into where, our VP of sales or, our VP of marketing, they're like, we absolutely need this out, in the next week. It's an announcement. It's something that's extremely timely. And we're like, okay, well, that means that these other things get deprioritized. And then there's other scenarios where it's, hey, we want to put together this whole great, like play around customer stories. Well, let's do a really, good discovery with them to understand why do you want that? What are we trying to accomplish here? And can we tie that in with other things to really drive, business impact?
Yeah.
Has
Go ahead,
anyone
Amy.
seen the movie? It's a rhetorical question, obviously. Has anyone seen the movie Office Space? Yeah. Show of hands. All right. So 6 months ago, I was part of a company before 8x8 that got bought out. So it was public and it went private. And I was the only non-VP that got interviewed as enablement. And that goes to show you where enablement is going. Mm-hmm. So over the course of 2 months, I got called in about 8 different times. I felt like Peter Gibbons. It felt kind of good because I met the Bobs a lot. But it was every time it was, am I going to get fired? Am I going to get headcount? So essentially, you have to know your market. I see a lot of familiar faces in here. You've got some great market leaders in here. You've got Siobhan Thatcher from Ring Central. You've got Dr. Robert Peterson here. Learn from them. Look at CSO insights. Look at serious decisions and form data-driven initiatives. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I showed up to the Bobs and then eventually to my CEO. This is what serious decisions and CSO insight says. If we have market alignment, we get 13.5% increased quota attainment. If we have internal alignment, we get 6.8% quota attainment increase. And this is not me saying it. This is what the market is saying. This is what researchers are saying. Okay, of these 8 different initiatives and how it's going to move the needle, if we engage in social selling, we can increase by 33%. So if I'm going to do these things, here are the priorities, here are the different things I can do. Now here are the head count I have. This is how I can spread them around. What do you want me to drop? And that's a very easy conversation. So it shows them, I'm going to lay down each railroad track for you, but you got to tell me where you want me to go. You want me to build one to North Carolina, or you want me to build one to California? I can do it. Just help me pick.
I think that's a great point, because then at that point, it's not enablement giving them what we think they need.
Exactly.
We are actually saying, okay, here are the initiatives that you want driven.
Yep.
Here's the impact we'll have. And then on the back end, here are the KPIs and metrics that will come back to show the effectiveness. Now I'm hearing a theme, and that theme is productivity, right? And impact. And so, Carrie, this is one of the things we talked about earlier, and I want to circle back. We've all reported into various places, marketing, to sales ops, to sales, to operations, et cetera. Back to the impact piece, how do you think that where we report as sales enablement practitioners, and I'll open this up to you and then to the rest of the panel as well, how do you think this impacts all of us as sales enablement practitioners, depending upon where we report into?
I think that where you report into is greatly influenced by whoever the executive is that's leading that function. And what they care about is often what you're going to be held accountable for and evaluated on. So I think it can be a really big driver of how a sales enablement team is oriented or how they focus. I think if you're able to elevate the conversation, though, because You know, as you've heard from several people here, to be successful in sales enablement, you have to work really well across the different functions in the organization. And to be able to engage with that executive in driving conversations about what's the broader impact that we're trying to make within the organization, not just how are we trying to move the needle in marketing, in sales, in customer success, and to seek to address those things and design programs that are going to meet the broader needs of the organization. It's not easy to do, and I think it is important because at the end of the day, you're looking at trying to drive revenue and customer success. I think that is a key outcome that you're looking for, but it isn't just revenue. Okay, so I know that there's often talk about sales productivity, driving revenue. And this has been a big move for us at Autodesk, is expanding into customer success and taking that really, really seriously. And yes, that drives revenue too, but it does start to change the way you're evaluating the impact of what you're doing as an organization.
And I don't think it's, excuse me, I don't think it's unique to Autodesk either. I'm starting to see a lot in the market. And again, going back to serious decisions, 5 years ago, the enablement function was reporting into marketing. And then maybe 3 years ago, it started to report into head of sales. And now we're seeing a move where it's reporting into the COO or the CCO. And it's really smart, actually, because it's one thing to call somebody's baby ugly. It's really hard to call your boss's baby ugly. Yeah. So it's really good to see that movement. And if it's reporting to the COO or the CCO, your end customer is the end customer. It's not to marketing. It's not to sales. And the COO and the CCO have customer success as part of the team. So I think it's a really smart move, and that's kind of where enablement's kind of going.
One of the things that I think enablement people are well positioned to do is to drive some of the conversations across an organization also. Because it's really hard to do what you do if there isn't that alignment. If marketing and sales aren't quite mismatched, or aren't quite matched. And I look at it as sort of a trust but verify. Maybe you're getting direction from a sales leader, you're getting direction from a marketing leader. I don't always just take them at their word. You kind of do the trust but verify and go confirm with some of the key leaders, is this indeed the priority? Is this indeed the outcome that you're looking for? And if it's not, you can help facilitate that alignment.
So we've talked a lot about leadership and influence from the executive level. And so Steve, a question for you quickly is, how do we get to that holy grail that we call executive support? And how do we ensure that the enablement charter is aligned across the entire organization, to the point earlier of the reporting to CCO or COO? Now you have to look at everything across the board. So how do you get that executive support, and how do you show the value of being able to scale it across the org?
Sure. So, I think that on one hand the answer is kind of obvious, but I think it's when you get to the next layers of it that it gets more complex. So, the obvious answer is align to what the business needs and drive what the business needs. But I think when you start to unpack that a bit, being able to help sales leaders see things they don't see yet, be able to say, hey, look, here's the next corner we have to look around, here's the next change the organization's going to have to go through to achieve our goals. That's when you start to become a real strategic advisor to that sales leader. And so going back to the question that was asked earlier, when you see something or a senior leader sees something, folks on the ground don't yet see that. That's a huge opportunity to actually take one of the first most important steps in enablement, which is getting the why change message right. And I think many of us are kind of bought into that as a way of selling. I think that applies equally internally.
Agreed.
And especially when you can have tight alignment between enablement and whether it's ops or sales strategy or an analytics team that's tightly tied into the performance of the organization, and you can help diagnose, all right, we've got an issue over here, there's something over here that's not working as well as it could be, or we see an opportunity, now let's go align the resources behind solving that opportunity. I think when you start to have that conversation, I've never seen a senior leader that didn't want more and more of that.
How many people here have a sales background? Okay, so this is kind of a sales conversation that you're trying to initiate within your company, because you have a business within your company. You have something of value. And if you can find a way to match that to the outcomes that your company is trying to achieve, you can engage in some of those conversations. I think it's also really helpful to think about what is unique about your organization? What are some of those relationships that you have that can help you further some of the things that you're trying to do? One of the examples that we have on our team is we own sales kickoff. We own the annual kickoff. And there's a lot of people who have a vested interest in making sure that that goes off really, really well. A lot of contributors across the company, from your product groups, marketing, sales, customer success, are all contributing to it. So we're in charge of putting that together. So that is a compelling event. It is a forcing function that allows you to bring together different people across the company to drive those strategic conversations and drive alignment.
So 2 final questions. Let me stop for my pulse check. Any questions out in the audience before I ask? Go right ahead.
My name's Rob. I wanted to touch on the first and last word of this panel. I want to hear what would rapid fire evolution, what happened? Was it the sales team came back and said, hey, we need to go in this direction? Or was it you did such a great job, now they added customer success or something else? Or you just came, you met Jefferson, you saw the light. What was the evolution for your particular, the charter has to change?
Yeah, I mean, it was largely driven off of success. I mean, we are growing our enablement team internally at a very rapid pace because we had such success with not only the customers, so the sales reps, the managers, even the services, partner reps, all those people, but there was absolutely the ability to measure the success of what we were doing, and so there was more.
Was that revenue? Was it smile sheets? What was like?
Yeah. So yeah.
You stole my last question.
No, it's a really no. It's a good question. So there's a couple of different elements, and I'll kind of tie in the previous question that we were talking about because it's related to this. When you think about the evolution of, sales enablement or enablement that's even, working with, a lot of the different functions within the organization, if you want to get executive buy-in, you need to have a seat at the executive table. And so, I report right into our CEO, and our head of marketing, our head of sales are my partners. I'm working with them. I'm not working for them. And so, to answer your question, there's absolutely a, quantitative element to, here was the goal. The goal was set up front. Did we achieve that? Whether it's around content, whether it's around training, whether it's around, increasing velocity, increasing conversions, whatever it is, there is that quantitative element, but a huge piece of it was actually the qualitative element that is feedback from the front line and from the managers, more importantly. Leading enablement internally, but then also leading one of our sales teams internally, the account development team, nothing's gonna get to the front line without going through my managers first. And it's so important to get that buy-in and then to be able to work with the partners at the executive level to tell the story, just like you would with, in a sales conversation, to tell the story. Here was the goal, here's what we set out to do, here's what we did, here were the results. And then getting that qual feedback from the front line when you're actually helping them and when you're actually developing people, you will actually get a salesperson that will take time out of their day from selling to give that positive feedback if you're doing a really great job. And that goes a really long way. And that's really helped accelerate our function and continue to make it a function that is not reporting into sales, it's not reporting into marketing, it's partnering with those organizations rather than, working for them.
Time for one more question. We have one over here.
Yeah, my name is Ray. I work for Shopify. I think I've met you, Ryan, at your LearnCore conference. Good to see you again. I'm a big believer of strengths. I believe salespeople, customer success people, they have unique strengths that impact the ability to close business. And so, to me, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're empowering your sales leaders to identify those strengths within their teams and leverage those strengths as opposed to treating the enablement function as trying to get people to complete learning and read resources, but rather, developing them as, in terms of who they really are and what they enjoy about their jobs. Now, I want to caution, this isn't a tools question. This is really a culture question I'm asking, is how do you get leaders to buy into that concept? instead of, coaching to a sales process. They're rather coaching to strengths. Sorry, really long-winded, but hopefully it made some sense.
I'll just say a quick piece about that. The culture element absolutely starts the minute that you start recruiting and then through the hiring process. If you don't have the right people in place to do that and you don't have the right frontline managers in place to do that, then you're creating an uphill battle for yourself. So I think that first and foremost, it really starts with the people that you're bringing into the organization. And then another element that at least we've seen a lot of success with is that, the coaching and development that we do, whether it's myself to, our managers or whether it's managers to individuals that are on their team, everything is very, very personalized based on understanding what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses that they might want to improve or we might want to mitigate, identifying, which we want to do with that. And then what are their passion areas? What do they want to learn about? Where do they want to go within the organization? And being an advocate for them, and then rewarding the management when they are successful in doing that. So, I think again, it goes back to even the managers to the front line on coaching and teaching them, enabling them on how to do the discovery and understanding where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and giving them the tools, not in a technology sense, but more in a skills sense, to be able to help develop and advocate for their people internally. And when you have that culture of learning and collaboration, and when you're advocating for the people on your team, that has to trickle down from the very top all the way through to the recruiting process. And I think that's where you kind of see the magic happen there. Obviously, there's a lot of things that you can do, like little smaller wins, but I think that foundation is really important.
I hate coming to these and not walking away with, what can I go do now? I'm all excited. What do I do with it? So as a final question, if you could leave the audience with one actionable item that they could do right now when they walk out of here, 20 seconds or less, what would it be?
Over-communicate. Over-communicate with all your partners, everybody in the organization, whether it's sales, marketing, HR, CS, what the priorities are, why, and make sure that there is alignment across all the groups. So,
Peng?
I'd say to gain alignment, go look at the research, go look at CSO insights, go look at serious decisions, and then form data-driven initiatives and get buy-in from your leadership.
So one thing today, meet some of the people in this room. Talk to other people who do what you do. They can give you some insights into how you can advance your agenda.
Steve?
Have a point of view about what the business needs.
I would say get a seat at the executive table from the top, and then also get down on the ground and understand what your frontline and what your managers need.
And I would leave with two things. One, remember that enablement is an ongoing occurrence. It's not a single event. And lastly, remember, we train animals, we enable people.
All right,
Thank
how
you
about
all very
a
much.
big round of applause for our panelists? Excellent discussion, panelists. If I could ask.